What if I told you there was a film camera that could do just about everything? Whether you're in the water, on land, in the surf or on the street, this is a camera that would not let you down no matter what you threw at it. Enter the Nikonos V. Now this is a camera surf photographers have long gravitated towards, generally because of the low cost associated with being able to get in the water and start shooting. Especially when you compare that to the thousands of dollars the comparative digital camera setup and a housing is going to cost you to do the same thing. My first Nikonos cost me a whopping 80 Australian dollars. It came with a 35mm lens, throw in a roll of film, and I was in the water shooting surf for very little money. The days of finding a Nikonos V for $80 are long gone, unfortunately, guys. These days, they are going to set you back between about $300 to $400 Australian dollars. So what does that money get you? Well, let's take a dive up and take a look at the features of this camera real quick. You get a solid, well-built camera. I mean, it could be used as a club to fight off a shark if need be. You get a 1/1000th of a second max shutter speed, aperture priority, a manual mode, a very bright and clear viewfinder, a very accurate light meter, and of course the ability to go in and underwater. The camera is usually found with a 35mm 2.5 lens, but what a lot of people don't know is there is actually 6 dedicated lenses for the Nikonos system. First, you have the 3 lenses designated UW, meaning underwater only. They are the 15mm 2.5, the 20mm 2.8, and the 28mm 3.5. For above and below the water, you have the 35mm 2.5 and an 80mm f4, which are the 2 lenses that I have experience with. And finally, there is an above water only 28mm 2.8 lens, which is obviously your general purpose street photography walk around lens. It's definitely the rarest of all and the most expensive. And if I could find it, I would love to add it to the setup. Now, I like to call this camera a Swiss Army knife. It can do pretty much everything, except for the elephant in the room, and that is precise focusing. Because this camera employs a zone focus system across all its lenses, precise portrait work is something not designed or not recommended for this camera. Now, some of you might be wondering why I'm making this video when I am such a huge advocate of my Nikon F100 in a water housing. Simply put, guys, I did not mean to buy this camera. It was an accidental purchase. I found a nice olive green one on eBay. It came with the original box, and more importantly, it came with a full spare set of O-rings, which is the hardest thing to find for these cameras these days. So I added the camera to my watch list and it sat in there for 7 or 8 weeks, and then all of a sudden the seller started accepting offers. Now, I threw him, and I'm not proud of it, an absolute lowball of an offer. I mean, 1/3 of what these cameras should sell for, and for some ungodly reason he actually accepted it. Lo and behold, I'm now the owner of a new Nikonos V again. But the camera really is a Swiss Army knife camera, guys. One thing I have used this for over the years many a times is street photography. On the street, zone focusing can be an invaluable tool for grabbing those decisive moments, and this camera is perfectly set up for that. The pincers on the lens show you exactly your focus area. It's simple to read and easy to set. The viewfinder is more akin to that of a rangefinder, which is great for street work. And the shutter is near silent. It's muffled by the watertight surroundings of the camera. Whether it's surf or street, this camera has you covered. How many camera systems can you say that about? Now, I'm sure on the topic of street photography, somebody is going to make the comment that most of these cameras are skinned in a bright orange or fluorescent orange covering, and that mine olive green one is the limited edition, more expensive or premium one, if you will. Now, personally, I think those cameras with the bright coverings are better for street photography because they look like a toy. A lot of the times, people aren't going to take you seriously when you've got a fluorescent camera in your hand. But if it bugs you that much, you can actually do what I did. My original Nikonos V, the orange coverings were falling off, so I ripped them all off and actually replaced them with black wetsuit neoprene. So all black, very stealthy. Now, it's not all sunshines and rainbows with this camera, guys. This camera is electronically controlled and it requires two LR44 or two SR44 batteries to operate. And without batteries, you're obviously limited to no light meter and only 1/90th of a second mechanical shutter release. But these cameras definitely require a bit of TLC to keep them in good working order. There are several O-rings on the camera that need to be taken care of. These are on the back door, on the lens, and on the battery door. These need to be greased each time you plan on going in the water and cleaned afterwards from any salt, sand, debris left on them. Anything that could potentially stop the camera from sealing properly when you close the back door or connect the lens. Especially salt water, guys. Salt water is the enemy of this camera. Once you've swum with this camera in the salt, guys, you really need to wash the camera with fresh water, turn all the dials just to make sure you get every bit of salt out of it possible before you let the camera dry. But because this is an electronically controlled camera, guys, and you're using it in salt water, if the camera becomes flooded, it essentially turns into a ticking time bomb. My original Nikonos suffered from this problem, not on my watch. I'm assuming that the previous owner flooded the camera because at one point in time, the light meter just stopped working on my camera, guys. It became inoperable. And that's generally, obviously, because salt water likes to corrode things. So once it gets inside this camera, there's no telling when, but eventually the camera will die. But in the next couple years, guys, some of these cameras are going to be over 40 years old. And they are still working and functioning just fine. You just need to give them a bit of love, treat them with a bit of respect, clean them, grease those seals, and they will last for many more years to come. Now, who is this camera for, guys? I think unless you're a dedicated landscape photographer, this is a camera that can have a place in any film shooter or any photographer's lineup for that matter. Perhaps you like to go skiing, climbing, hiking, wakeboarding. You tend to do a lot of outings in, light, mild, severe, inclement sort of weather. This is the perfect camera to have with you on those sorts of trips, guys, because you don't need to baby it. If you fall over and land on this camera, you're probably going to hurt yourself before you actually break the camera. And just the fact that it's completely waterproof gives you peace of mind, guys. You don't need to baby this camera when you're hitting the slopes. You don't need to worry about a torrential rain when you're hiking up the side of a mountain and you want to take photos. It's just peace of mind knowing that the camera is going to continue to function. And if you scroll through Instagram these days, guys, you will see some absolutely amazing photos taken with these cameras. The prices have risen, but I still think they represent amazing value for what you can do with this camera. This is a camera that you can put in situations you wouldn't normally put a film camera, or any camera for that matter, without being worried about breaking it. It lets you be even more creative with your compositions and how you shoot a camera, that it can lead to some very, very creative images. If you can find one, I highly recommend picking it up. It's so much fun. Even if it's a camera you only plan to use once or twice a year, it's still worth the money in my opinion. The places you can go with this camera are limitless. So if you find one, grab it, look after it, treat it with some respect, and it will last you for a long time.